Sorry.
Oh, right, okay. Corrie, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yes.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
all.
all.
And
And
welcome to
welcome to
everybody.
everybody.
Susan,
Susan,
how are
how are
you?
you?
Excellent, thank you, Steve.
What was
What
your
was your
weekend like?
weekend like?
I just seem to be going out all the time at the minute, which is disgraceful. Just
I
seem to be
know,
out
I
all the
know.
time. What can I say?
I
Just
saw
I
some
saw
apart.
some
pictures on
pictures on
Facebook and I
Facebook and I
thought,
thought,
she's not
she's
turning
not
into an
turning into an
alcoholic, is
alcoholic, is
she?
she?
Not quite, but
No,
there's been a
no.
couple of people whose birthdays it's been, and there's a sort of elongated commitment to going out for lunch and dinner and stuff like that. Just got to be done. Just got to be done.
Yeah.
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 So,
So,
Susan, what are we
Susan, what
talking
are we
about
talking about
tonight?
tonight?
Well, we thought we would talk about the way people approach setbacks, and I suppose the topic is how fair is your life? Because you do find people who say, my life, it's not fair, nothing good happens to me, everything bad is aimed in my direction, people don't like me. There can be a very negative approach, and sometimes that happens as a build-up when we've had a few knocks, but in the main it's about perception. If we treat something as bad, it will continue to be bad. If we treat something as a minor stumbling block along the way, we'll probably recover better.
We always
We
say
always
that,
say
don't
that,
we?
don't we?
You know, it's
So
not
it's not
fair.
fair.
You know, everything
Everything
happens to
happens to
me.
me.
I'd say
I'd
every
say
day.
every day.
What, everything bad happens to you?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Because the truth is that they call it red car syndrome. So supposing you were buying a red car, and yesterday you weren't buying a red car, but today you decide you are doing, then what would happen is that along the way you would probably think, you'd start to notice how many red cars there are out there. Before you decided to make that decision to buy a red car, you'd probably never really notice. But once you've made that decision, you see all the different shades of red, the different kinds of red, the different cars that are red, how many there are. You focus in on it. And that happens with anything. That happens with, I don't know, if you're having your driveway tarmacked or whatever it might be. And somebody says they've had, oh, my dad had a stroke, and 5 people will immediately go, oh, yes, so did my neighbour or whoever. So we zoom in on things that we may not have noticed. And the same thing happens with negatives. If we've had 1 or 2 knocks, it can change our outlook, perhaps bring us into a lower vulnerable place. And at times like that, we have to give ourselves a bit of a shake if we can and say, okay, let me step back from this. It isn't about me. It's not people who are aiming their negativity in my direction. Not everything that bad that happens in my life is about me. And we have to sort of work on learning from what's happened, learning to become resilient, learning to become a bit more positive, dusting ourselves down, maybe taking a break and picking ourselves up again to start afresh.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a child, I used to say that to it's not fair to my mum loads of times because my sister, she was really spoiled. And she used to get everything, and I used to say, that's not fair. I'm the oldest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have to support ourselves in these decisions, because, one thing we can't do is sort out other people's behaviour towards us or other people's reactions to us. We may challenge them. We may say, what's going on? You seem to be treating me in a negative way. We can ask about it, challenge about it. But if people choose to behave that way, then we have to learn to perhaps step back and protect ourselves. And there are several ways we can do that. We can surround ourselves with good people who care about us, who support us, who validate us. We can remind ourselves of our successes and make sure every day or every few days we do something that we know we're good at. We can start to reinforce ourselves and our positive approach about life, and maybe detach from some of the negative people. I've certainly done that this last 12, 18 months. I've walked away from some people who were quite negative towards me, and I just thought, don't really need this in my life. Actually, these people aren't doing me any good. They're making me feel stressed and tense. Actually, I'm going to try and change my lifestyle, or try and change how often I have to meet them, or try and change how I react to them, so that I don't get so affected by it. And I think that's something we all need to take into account, because there might be work colleagues or family members that are part of a social group that we're in. And we maybe have to meet these people or come into contact with these people on a regular basis. And it's about stepping back and doing things that allow us to say, okay, maybe I can't do anything about this at the moment, but I'm certainly going to build into my life things that feel good for me.
And what happens if people don't listen?
If who doesn't they don't listen?
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to say, as I say, we have to perhaps step back and detach. We have to say, okay, can I resume my life without meeting these people again? Can I resume my life where I have to meet them less often? Can I, if it's family, can I change my plans so that whenever I go less frequently to see them, but when I do go, I take a friend with me so I'm less affected by it? Or we make sure, we can't necessarily walk away from a job or lose our family, but we may be able to build in things that reinforce how good we are, so that we do things for ourselves, that we come away and we think, I'm actually okay. I can do this. Here are my successes. Here are the things that I'm good at. I'm excellent at this. People appreciate me for that. And I think if we build up our own database of successes, we can feel better about ourselves and less affected the fact that not everybody likes us or not everybody is good to us.
Yeah. But it can be tough, can it?
Sure. I quote an example sometimes of when I was working, years ago I worked for British Gas, and before a lot of us were being made redundant, they brought CV writers, curriculum vitae writers in to sort out our skills and our abilities and our aptitudes and write these CVs. And the person who was doing mine handed me this paper, a couple of sheets long, I think it was, and I read through it and I went, is this mine? And she went, yeah. And I thought, wow. And I hadn't realised, and we do take an awful lot of stuff that we do well for granted. We pick things up, we pick up skills. We may be good at baking, we may be good at gardening, we might be good at presenting or writing or whatever it might be. And there will be things in there that we're good at that we just think, oh, it's nothing. I just do that. But I think sometimes if we step back and somebody else, like in the case with this for us at the time with British Gas, that somebody else walks in and looks at us and goes, gosh, you do this, this, this and this. And we're like, blimey, I hadn't realised. And you kind of take for granted what you do because you do it daily. You've learned how to do it over time. You don't really think about it. But when you do, you can remind yourself that you're actually quite competent and skilled in lots of different areas.
Yeah, and sometimes feelings come into that too, isn't it? Like your favourite feeling. When you say
absolutely, we can feel that we, guilt or being responsible or whatever it might be. But the thing is that if we start doing things that we're good at, or we link a few of those in, then people potentially will give us compliments. People will potentially say, that was really great. I'm really pleased you did that for me. It was a big help. And the British way is to go, oh, it's nothing. But learn to accept those compliments. Learn to appreciate what people say. Learn to listen and say, oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that or whatever. And become more receptive to hearing good things about yourself, particularly if you're going through a stressful phase or a phase where you don't feel there's much good stuff coming your way. It's important to do that.
Yeah. Sometimes about hurting somebody's feelings, it can be so hurtful sometimes, and people will kind of like just walk away and they just forget you.
Well, that's more about them than it is about the you in that situation. That's more about the other person than it is about what we have said or done at that time. I mean, if we feel that somebody's overreacted, we could perhaps say to them, I'm not a fan of saying I'm sorry, because I think sorry always infers that we are guilty or we've done some wrong. But we can say, I'd like to talk about what's happened, and can you enlighten me as to why you're feeling that way? And then you can maybe discover why they've been so badly affected. Now, if they choose not to do that, you can say, well, I am sorry you feel that way, but I'm around if you want to talk about it at some point. Let me know. But in truth, not every relationship in our lives lasts forever. So some relationships, some friendships are a temporary thing. And we've talked about friendships before, that sometimes the people we have in our lives are there purely because of circumstances. Our kids are at the same school, or we work at the same place, or we go to the same gym, or we're neighbours and live in the same area, the same vicinity. And so that might be the only commonality that we have in our lives, in which case there's not an awful lot necessarily that will pull that together. And sometimes we have to go, okay, it's been fun while it lasted, but hey ho, sometimes we have to move away and perhaps start focusing on a different social group or a different friendship group or something else, and allow it to end.
Yeah, but sometimes you feel we don't make people get to go, do we? Or
well, we have to sort out what the driver is within ourselves, because if it is just our own feeling of being rejected or not liked or not popular or whatever, then we have to perhaps learn to go, okay, what are my choices here? Am I going to run around after this person indefinitely, kowtowing, telling them they can treat me as however they like? Am I going to continue to be, wiping their brow and running around after them and driving them everywhere and being a slave or a servant or whatever, perpetually apologetic and perpetually in a stress state for watching how I behave and what I say and do? If eventually that might start to jar a bit, and we might go, actually, this isn't the way I want to live my life. And I think that was in part the situation I walked away from. That I found that when I was in with these particular people, that I was constantly on edge, thinking, because there was one person in the group who every time I spoke was incredibly negative. So I learned to be part of that group and be quiet. And then I thought, actually, over lockdown, there's no way I'm going back to that. So I actually walked away from that. And lockdown, coronavirus actually gave me an opportunity to rethink. I'd probably still be going otherwise, but it became quite a wearing, debilitating, stressful situation. And I think sometimes we have to look at what's going on and what we are giving permission to happen to us. I'm giving permission for these people to perhaps treat me in this way, or to neglect me, or to be rude to me, or to turn me into a slave or a servant. Actually, do I want this? No, I don't anymore. I found other ways of taking care of me. So whatever. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah. How about highlighting other people's behaviour?
Well, highlighting people's behaviour can be where if somebody has got used to taking advantage, has got used to delivering short, we can teach. I mean, I do a lot of work with businesses, and I was talking only at the weekend with a manager who wanted his staff to like him. And the problem with that is that the staff were increasingly perhaps arriving a few minutes late, and then a few minutes later, or perhaps leaving a little bit earlier, or taking a long time on a coffee break, or saying I couldn't do that piece of work, or I need a bit more time. And they were gradually taking advantage. And he started to get very stressed because his managers were saying, hang on a minute, what's happening here? Your section, your department is underperforming a bit. You're a responsible position. So we did some work on him appreciating that there's not every situation that we can be everybody's friend. And so sometimes we have to say, okay, if being a friend, in a position of seniority, you sometimes have to find other ways of being liked but fair, detaching yourself but being on board, and Certainly some scenarios need a pleasant environment, but they don't need a pleasant environment where everybody's rocking up late or somebody's being perceived as being the favourite and everybody else is becoming disgruntled. So we have to sometimes think, okay, I can be liked, but liked in a different way. And not every relationship is going to be where people adore us and we adore them and everything's sweetness and light. Sometimes there's a different set of parameters, different set of boundaries that need to come into play.
Yeah. What happens if we get treated negatively by other people?
Well, if we get treated negatively, we maybe need to step back, have a look at what we, do I have to own some of this? Is part of this my responsibility? When they started treating me negatively, did I just smile and go, all right, okay? Or did I say, hang on a minute, what's that about? And sometimes we don't want to say, hang on a minute, what's going on? Because we don't want to be seen as the bad guy or the tension creator. So sometimes we have to actually look at what's going on and decide whether we are putting up with that. Something, I've said this before, something like 85-90% of communication is non-verbal. So if somebody is negative to me or you, and we shrink or we go stressed or we start breathing in a panicky way or we swallow or we get dry mouth or we whatever, then all that information is going to be communicated to the other person, not overtly, but in a subtle way, so that they go, oh, that person's reacting. Now we know that we see this because sometimes we'll say, don't know, there's something about that person, I don't like them. Or there's something about that person, I do like them. So we know that we are giving off positive or negative signals all the time. But if we are in a situation where somebody's treating us negatively, we will become more stressed. We will be breathing a bit differently. We will be tense. And we need to step back and go, hang on a minute, let me detach a little bit, work on my confidence, do things that I'm good at, build myself up in a positive way, and allow myself to feel better about me.
What happens if people don't like us and all of a sudden that they're going to dip off like depression and because what I'm mentioning that is because I've been through that when I was in the media. I got loads of it.
Well, in truth, we have to accept that in any situation, give or take, this is not me saying this is proven time and time again, in any situation, roughly, a third of the people will like us, so they care and they're bothered and they're invested in the relationship. A third of the people won't like us, whatever we do. If we bought them a coffee every day, they'd think we were a creep. If we didn't buy them a coffee every day, they'd think we were tight. So a third of the people won't like us, whatever we do. We could stand on our head for days and they'd, make something negative. And a third of people are floating voters. If we're okay, they're okay. If we're not okay, they're not okay. Now, so long as we're part of the third that like us, and two, so long as everybody behaves in a reasonably polite way and is courteous enough, we can get by. But we know, you don't like everybody you come into contact with. None of us do. And a lot of the relationships we have will be what I call circumstantial. So we're there because we work there, or we're there because we shop there, or we're there because we eat there, or we're there because we... whatever it might be. And so some of those relationships are circumstantial. So we are there because of a reason, and that's okay. And if those people are okay, we're not going to be inviting them home for tea. We're not going to be talking about going away for a weekend. So long as we get on okay, that's often good enough for most relationships in our lives.
Yeah, we all don't like people, but if I'm concerned, I've done a couple of things that I might not like them, but I don't hate them.
Yeah, it's ambivalent. You're indifferent. You're not bothered either way. If you never saw them again, you might think you like them, and then you never see them for a few weeks, and you go, oh gosh, hello, I'd not seen you. You'd forgotten about them. So that's okay. And those are the people who, to a large extent, form what I call our outer circle. They're a lot of the people that we missed during lockdown. And those relationships have been are incredibly important, because the people that are the sort of floating voters. You know, the woman at the checkout. You go to the same supermarket to do your shop, and the woman at the checkout goes, "Oh, you've got no flowers today," or "Oh, that's," you know, make a few comments. "How are you? I've not seen you in a while." Or the person in the coffee shop says, "Same as usual," or whatever it might be, the bus driver. And a lot of those relationships are the ones that soothe us, that make us feel that we belong, that reinforce our sense of community. And we lost a lot of those relationships, which has impacted substantially on a lot of people's mental health, because those relationships are the cornerstone of our feeling of belonging and feeling part of society. And they were incredibly important. And that was a huge impact that a lot of this lockdown had on people.
Yeah, and it brought a lot of people together, isn't it?
Sure.
You know, I think I don't. Many people look at me and say, "Oh, Steve, you know, because you're a Christian, you've got to like everybody, and you've got to kind of like love everybody." That is true. That is really true. But I find it very difficult when somebody says something bad about me. Well,
I don't know if you necessarily have to like them. I think you can be polite, and you can maybe understand and think okay, but I don't think you necessarily have to. I mean, I'm a therapist, and I always say, I mean, some people disagree with me, but I always say forgiveness is an optional extra. So long as we're able to move on, so long as we don't let negativity... Absolutely. So long as we don't let negativity cloud our lives too much, I always say moving on. We don't necessarily have to forgive people, but as long as we can let it go and not allow us to be dreaming about it every night and waking up in the morning tormenting ourselves. So I don't think that we have to love everybody, but I think it's important to be polite. And if we're having an argument with somebody, we don't need to involve everybody else in that. And we can just be polite about it and get on with our lives. And I think, to me, that's the biggie, really.
Yeah. So how do we respect people's opinions about us?
Well, I think a few of the things that I've said, that people's opinions of us are subjective. They base their opinions on us, of what they're going through, how they feel about us. So if you're very successful, they may be jealous, they may be angry, they may be bitter, or they may be thrilled for you. So we have to accept that other people's opinions of us. There's a lovely saying that what other people think of me is none of my business. And the reason why they say that is because other people's opinions of us are based on a lot of things that we have no control about. Yeah. How they're feeling, have they had a bad day, has somebody let them down, has the relationship ended, are they feeling in a good mood? So we can kind of sort of accept that what people think about us is down to them as much as anything. But I do think we have to accept responsibility for how we feel, how we relate, how we react to those things. So doing things that we know we're good at, perhaps telling other people what we've done, not in a boastful way, but saying, "Oh, by the way, I've done this," or "By the way, I've done that," and allow people to know what you've done and allow people to appreciate your value. Accepting praise, accepting compliments, and really keeping around us those people who do like us, who are supportive, who do care about us, and working on that circle, that orbit that we have some control over. And I think that's all we can do to keep ourselves in that positive place.
Brilliant. Very good. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
In life, we all kind of live together in this world. I believe it's this, that we all should get on. But it's never going to happen. When people get arguments, there's a lot of divorces out there. And we live in a world with a lot of problems. And the way we can kind of heal this starts with us. It's our attitude to life. And if we start loving one another and caring about people, I think that would go a long way. Good night all.